Hey there, whoever you are. I'm just getting ready, so I won't be long. Just tagging the people that showed an interest. I got on a bit early to make sure this is all done and give people a chance to show up. So it's going to be an interesting day today because I'm going to be interviewing myself, which is going to be fun. Sorry, Nikki Moran, whoever you are, your name's not coming up when I try and tag you. Hopefully you get to see this, you get a notification, and I will be there soon. So just if you let yourself be known in the comments, tell me, have you ever gone through your entire life story and tried to work it out? You know, it's quite an interesting experience when you think about all the things you've been through and yeah, look at, you know, am I clear on these things? Have I got through them all? Luckily for me, as I was thinking this through last week, yeah, I realized I was still a bit ashamed of my actions, but knowing that they are what have made me, I was able to embody that and move forward quite quickly. So, oh, great to see you, Bina. Right, so slow going at the moment. Let me just get to zoom up. Hey, lovely to see you here. So I won't be commenting today. Logically, I'll be responding to any questions in the comments, assuming anyone shows up. And if not, this will be a fun show, but thank you for the people that have shown up so far. I am going to try not to say too much. I've noticed I've been doing that a lot as well. It's because I'm a little bit nervous, especially about today. I am not sure how I'm going to get this all into 1 hour. So let me record myself. Right. Well, thank you everybody for coming. Welcome to Food for Thought, episode 13 on the 23rd of January, 2023. So it's a portal day today. I decided to interview myself and share my story to inspire others to see that you can overcome anything. You've just got to have the desire to. Sorry, my camera is so bad today. It's normally bad, but it's really, really bad today. I can see that, but let's get on with it anyway. So, right, I've had to make some notes because I've had a long, long journey. And so my aim with telling my story is to show people that anything is possible, no matter what choices you've made, how many inherited or opposite beliefs you have, how many unhelpful habits you have, or what age you are. You can turn your life into your hero story at any time. Just find yourself, accept yourself, love yourself, and be your authentic self. So hi Rita, hi Maida, and hi Bina, and whoever else is watching. So there is no blame, shame, or guilt attached to any of these stories anymore. I am proud of myself for continually looking for answers and eventually overcoming my issues. I am grateful and appreciative for every effort people made for me and every opportunity I had. People pleasing, specifically my mum, but also a lot of other people, was probably the only reason I am where I am today, and has led me to learn a lot about myself and value myself. And without it, I'd probably be in the gutter somewhere or wouldn't be able to present these shows. So it's not always a weakness, people pleasing. So the things that stand out for me are freedom comes from accepting responsibility for yourself and your choices. Unconditional love needs to be given internally first for you to attract it in life. There is little value in material things, accelerated highs, and even money. They are just distractions from the things you have not resolved internally. If you do not agree with this, I suggest you reflect on whether you could be happy without these things. The acceptance of others and self-medicating. Yeah. So if can you really be happy without these things? Because that's what life's about. You know, I believe you can only be happy once you've learned to accept life for what it is without all of our inventions. Hey, Anna, nice to see you here. Good, you can hear us fine. That's brilliant. Okay. All right. So I'm going to try and make this as natural as possible, but I've had to document this because it was quite a list. So I'm just going to let you know that a lot of these things happen really because I feared being my authentic, heart-centered self. I feared letting others down. I feared being abandoned. Yet I was very lucky I wasn't, to be honest, and very appreciative of that as well. So I'm going to start right at the start. I was born in Harlow in Essex to my mum and dad, and my sister was born when I was 1 year old. My dad and mum split up when I was 2, and I lived with my mum. We moved 3 times before I was 4. Once I was 4, we lived in a beautiful place where I have a lot of happy memories. My mum worked very hard to provide a good life for me and my sister. One empowering memory I have of this time was when me and my sister woke up, my mum was not in the house and we thought we'd been abandoned. I said to her, "Don't worry, we'll be fine." And I got her a piece of bread. I was about 5 years old at this time, maybe 6. I now know I'd found myself and my natural caring nature. I'd learned to put others first, though I hadn't learned to take care of myself. I realized at this time I feared abandonment because of the abandonment and how, having somebody around and then not having them around is what causes this issue. We don't understand. We're feeling love and then the next minute that love is gone. And at a young age, it's very hard and it does leave its mark if we don't resolve it. I had a lot of questions already for such a young child, and my behavior was probably quite attention seeking with a working parent and my father leaving. Also, where we lived, beautiful. I had happy memories like walking around the lakes behind our house, riding my BMX out the front and building ramps, playing in the garden where there was lots of rose beds. I even remember one time playing football, trying to get the football out the rose bed and stabbing my eye on a rose thorn. But still a happy memory. And there was a big quarry behind our house, and one of the guys who drove one of the cranes, he was called Digger, and he took me out in the crane and we sat on the edge of the cliff digging all these hills. We lived there from 4 to 7 years old. We had 2 neighbours. I remember the children's name. One was called Debbie, and she lived about a mile away on a big farm. And then my other neighbour was called, I just forgot his name right now. But I used to go and play with him in his garden, and he was quite close to us sometimes. His dad was the gamekeeper because we lived on a big estate. Other than that, it was just me, my mum, and my sister. One night, there was a noise outside, and my mum called the police to find out what it was. And this policeman called Trevor turned up, and they hit it off, and he soon became my first stepdad. As my mum and him were courting, let's call it, I think that's what the proper term is, I stole money from my mum, her rent money that she was collecting to pay the rent for the house, and I hid it under my teddy. Now I was 6 years old maybe at this time. This I now know as attention seeking. I was jealous, I think, there hadn't been someone in my life, and now this man was coming and my mum was spending time with him and not with me. However, my mum didn't know what to do with it or what to do with my behaviour at the time, and so she asked Trevor and his police friend to talk to me. So they took me in their police car and drove me up the road. Cut a long story short, my mum and Trevor got together and we moved into his house. While we lived there, it was my first time living around many people, and I started a new school. I remember being in a lot of trouble at school and not getting on very easily with people. And I had a friend, I don't remember his name now because I was 6 or 7 years old, and we used to go out on our bikes at that time. Life was a lot safer back then, and I got caught shoplifting. Now, I'm not sure whether it was a cry for attention from my new stepdad, knowing that he'd probably take me in his police car if I got in trouble, or if it was just that I didn't know the value of things or know what I was doing. I was quite young. I remember we had a family holiday to Portugal together, And it was a happy memory that Carrie, who's a friend of mine on Facebook, he brought up. He was like, go back to your first like happy childhood memory. And this was one of them. And for many years, I thought it was because we were together as a family. But as I regressed through Carrie into this memory, I realized that actually it was the freedom and the adventure of new things that were all my memories of this holiday. It was exploring the house, exploring the land around the house and all these things. So anyway, after this brief few years of having a stepdad, he unfortunately for my mum cheated on my mum and they split up, and we moved county. I became even more difficult at this point. So I'm now 7 years old and this is the second man that's left my life very suddenly again and without explanation. And having a 9-year-old now, I know no amount of explanation is really going to enable me to understand that. So we moved to Toddington in Bedfordshire, and I became a very difficult child for my mum. I really understand. I didn't feel like I fitted in. I didn't feel, I think at the time, I didn't feel worthy. I didn't accept myself. I blamed myself for people leaving me. And, you know, although I was appearing angry to them, I was really, because I was blaming myself. It was a difficult time. I got in trouble at school again. All sorts of things were just, you know, it wasn't very peaceful. It must have been really hard for my mum. And then she met my stepdad and they started seeing each other and he got introduced to my life. They still had it together today and he makes my mum very happy and I love him very much and very happy that he was in my life. But there was an event that happened at this time and I was about 9 years old. And it's one of those events where as a parent, you're trying your best to do the right thing. So I was a very difficult child and I was hurt and I was acting out and I was in the kitchen and my mum was talking about her and Ian, I believe. And I was like, I don't want another dad and all these things you say when you're hurt and all these things. And she turned around to me and said, don't worry, he's never going to be your dad. And I think at the time that felt like the right thing to say. And I probably would have said, great, good, that's what I want. I don't want a dad because I was I was so hurt. However, I did an inner child meditation last year and it took me back to that moment. And it made me realize that what actually happened at that moment is I felt abandoned in my own home. And I felt that I would never have a dad, and that was what I wanted more than anything. And that they would be together and I would be alone in my own home. And there's no blame for that. It was just a young child not knowing what to do, a parent not knowing how to deal with a difficult child and thinking they were saying the right thing to make the child happy at the time. In the meditation, it let me know that all the stuff I'm about to tell you, which is going to be difficult to squeeze into 59 minutes, but I'm going to do it, was a repercussion of this, was attention seeking, was the need for love and acceptance, was the need for connection, which ultimately comes from within. So I carried on being difficult. I fell out with kids in the street. I fell out with kids in school. I had friends as well. They weren't serious arguments, but for some reason to me, they seemed really serious at the time. But at that age, I suppose we just don't know. And, you know, if I don't clarify anything, feel free to ask questions. I am watching the comments. So at 11 or 12 years old, I actually started smoking. And again, I started smoking because I felt a lot of pain inside, and I kind of come to the conclusion that pain was stress. And I'd ask my mum, you know, as you do when you're kids, why do you smoke, mum? Why do you smoke? And her answer was, because I'm stressed. And so I'm like, okay, I'm feeling really stressed today. I'll steal some of my mum's cigarettes and go and smoke around the building site at the end of the road. So I did. I remember being quite destructive and ungrateful, but also quite creative at the same time. I loved Lego and played with things. And around this, shortly after this, we basically had to move out of this house because the recession had just hit in the UK. And so my mum, being a single parent, got a mortgage on this house when we moved. And then because of the recession, the value of the house had fallen to half of what the mortgage was. And so she couldn't afford to make the payments anymore. And so at 12, maybe 13, I think 12, we moved. We didn't move far. We moved to the next close. And I started making new friends. I still had a lot of self-worth issues and didn't accept myself. And so I did really like played the fool is the best way to put it, to say, and, was easily influenced by people. This led me to be diagnosed with depression at 13 years old. And at 13, I was prescribed Prozac, which is, I now know, a ridiculously strong antidepressant for a 13-year-old. I took it for a few weeks, but then I could tell, and I'm proud of myself for this observation at that age, that the problem wasn't fixed because I hadn't actually resolved it. I just masked over it with the medication. And so I stopped taking Prozac. That was where my journey of self-discovery really started. This is where I sat with psychiatrists and whatever the other psychologists, and they asked me questions, and they asked me why I behaved this way and all the relevant stuff and how I felt about this and all these things. Shortly after this, I went to boarding school. And so the story is a bit like this. My mum told me that somebody came from the school to the house to ask if I wanted to join because my granddad was in the Navy and both my uncles went to the school. And yeah, absolutely. So I'll just get back to the school in a second. But yeah, that hyper energy you had as a kid could be awareness within an appropriate context, which overwhelmed you for sure. One of the things I learned is what I was calling anxiety was my intuition. And I was often being overruled because people didn't think I was old enough to share things with me, even though I did have a good inkling of what was really going on. And so that stopped me following my intuition very much. So I went to boarding school, 13 years old. It wasn't just any old boarding school. It's the second biggest boarding school in the UK. It was a naval boarding school, naval meaning it was run by the Navy. And it was completely public. We used to have to wear naval uniform every Sunday. We used to have to march to breakfast. We had to go to church every day. We had to iron all our own clothes, polish our own shoes, make our own beds. It was a very good experience, if I'm honest, and I was very privileged to get to go to this school. While I was at the school, I got bullied a lot. Really, I was an easy target. I was so lacking confidence that people just would see it, they'd see me react, and they'd just pick on me more and more. And at the time at the school, there was a thing called oxing, whereas if you were older, you had privileges over the younger people. And most of the teachers at the time, not all, but most, would actually allow bullying. So because it was a naval boarding school, that soon changed as I grew up, but it did make me stronger, even though at the time I wanted to come home. I didn't want to be there. And because of that, and because of not feeling accepted again by the people, I did a lot of things for attention and acceptance. The trouble was the things I did were really naughty, and the school was not a really naughty place. I'll give you an example, because otherwise we'll be here forever if I give you all the examples. On my first Christmas there, they made a Christmas punch, and we had a matron, so a lady that made sure we had sheets and all these things, and if we cut ourselves, she looked after us and she told us where the iron was and things like that. And she did the ironing of labels, we did the ironing of clothes, so she put our names in our clothes for us and stuff. But I'd spotted she had 2 bottles of vodka in her room. And when they made punch, I'd grown up around parties and things. That's another part of the story that I've not put in here, but I knew that punch should have alcohol in it, and it was non-alcoholic. So I went and got one of those bottles of vodka and I poured it in the punch. And then I told all my friends, and some of them drank it, and we all got a little tipsy. And then you know, being young and not thinking things through. One of the guys was, he was a rugby player and he was having trials for England, and he paid for the county, and he found out what I did. And he was a lot bigger than me, quite a bit older than me, about 4 years older than me, I think. And he took me upstairs and he beat me up for doing it because he had rugby trials the next day and he didn't know he drank it. So anyway, these were all experiences that you have to do get in schools, and you know, they will make you stronger in the long run. I'm not a victim of those things, although my victim mentality as a child was making me feel even more depressed, you know, because I still at this time got depression. I learned to play bass guitar and I joined a band. I remember my first gig, we played in front of the whole school. Yeah, boarding school syndrome is a type of trauma. Yeah, I can relate to that one. I know you're joking. It's definitely made me stronger. Definitely looking at it made me realize that I was an easy target because I hadn't had emotional education, which is something that we definitely need to start giving to children so that they don't have to go through all these things. Have to understand that other people's actions are a reflection of their own weakness, not our weakness. So, you know, that's how I look at these things now. So I remember our first gig at school, and I was playing bass guitar, and we had two guitarists and a singer. And the funny thing was we all played rugby as well. And our lead singer had both his front teeth knocked out the day before the gig. And so he had, it was a weekend, so he couldn't get to the dentist. I know we had a school dentist, and the school dentist had glued them back in with this paste. And so he had a lisp. But it went really well. We had good few hundred people. There were 750 people at the school, and we had a good 300 or 400 of them in front of us at this gig. And I remember my music teacher with a big smile on his face, watching how far I'd come, because I'd only been playing bass for about 3 or 4 months. It was a really good experience. So my school life and home life, they were very different. School was dedicated and had strict routines. Like I said, we used to have to march to breakfast every day. We used to have to do a chore before we went to breakfast. They used to do fire alarms at 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of the winter, and we'd have to slide down these icy metal railings and stand in freezing cold in our pajamas for like up to half an hour or longer sometimes while they reset all the alarms. We had to go to school every Saturday morning. We had to do 4 hours of sports after school on Saturday. We didn't have a lot of free time. Like I said, every Sunday we would go to church for 1 hour after we'd done a parade, marching around the parade ground. We used to have to prepare all our own naval uniform and polish our shoes so that you could see your face in them. And then we'd be inspected. I mean, it was quite something. I did have the privilege of marching in front of the Queen, though, because our original school is the Maritime Museum in London, which is also the Queen's house. So that was originally the school before they moved it to where I went to school. And so for the 300-year anniversary of the school, we went down to London and we marched in front of the Queen. I remember this, my dad came along, who's not somebody I saw very much in my childhood. He'd always say he was going to show up, and he was really inconsistent. And my mum really struggled with that, I know, and so did my sister. And it wasn't easy for them, or for me at the time, but I've resolved it now. And he came along, he's like, yeah, you were great, ran off. He wanted to meet the Queen. That's the only reason he came, was so he could go and meet the Queen. Rest in peace. There's a wonderful woman who did many things for our country and for other people all around the world. So home, anyway, the difference between school and home. Home was rebellious and naughty. I grew up in the southeast of the UK. I lived in a lovely house in a nice little village. A little village for UK is 10,000 people. It's called Toddington. It's the first service station on the M1 as you leave London. But the village obviously isn't a service station, but that's why most people know it. I started drinking at quite a young age, and I got involved in smoking weed or cannabis and taking amphetamines on my holidays from school. So truthfully, I started drinking cider at about 13 years old. And the first time I took amphetamines, I was 15. So I was living in a really big duality. I was at school where people were focused and educated from naval backgrounds, thinking about their futures. And I'd never done any of these things, really. I was like still just trying to be accepted, just feeling unloved, feeling disconnected from everyone, feeling unworthy. And then at home, most of the kids felt like me. They either had dads who drank a lot and were aggressive, or their parents had separated, or, you know, there was a lot of separation around, and there is more and more these days. And so I was starting to mix the two cultures. At my school, I do a lot for attention, and mainly with girls. And I was friends with a lot of the older girls, sixth form girls, and there was a sponsored 24-hour dance happening where everybody had to dance for 24 hours, and those who made it would get sponsorship money. And so they were like, oh, how are we going to last 24 hours? How are we going to last 24 hours? And I was like, well, it's half term before the dance. I can bring some speed back. Well, turned out to be one of the first major mistakes of my life. I ended up getting expelled from school because of this. So let me just backtrack a little bit. We were quite naughty at school. We weren't allowed out of the school grounds, but we were allowed to ride bikes, and we had a river at the bottom of our school, and we had a lot of grounds, and it was hard to keep us on the grounds. And so we used to take our bikes and we'd cycle to the nearest village, and we'd secretly buy alcohol and cigarettes and then smuggle them back into the school. And this is like 14, 15 years old. We then secretly go off and get drunk in these tunnels under the school and in these other places where we could hide, and then we'd hide it from the teachers. I mean, now I'm older and I stopped smoking for a while. I still smoke now again, but I can tell, how could the teachers not smell cigarettes on us, or even alcohol? It stinks, but maybe they were just turning a blind eye. I remember one time we came cycling back into the school with these bags full of alcohol and cigarettes for everybody, not just ourselves. And we suddenly saw this teacher, and we stopped, and he's like, boys, what are you doing? And thank God he wore really strong glasses, and he didn't have them on. And so he didn't even notice that we had bags on our back. And he said, you're over the school lines, get back in behind the school lines. And we're like, okay, sir. And we rode on without jingling and without him even noticing. And then we got back into the school. So anyway, back to the expulsion, my first bad choice. Well, I came back to school and thinking what I was doing was cool, because I was torn between these two worlds. I told a couple of my best friends what I was doing. And as far as I know, one of them was really worried about me because he didn't know about these things. And he went and told the teacher. So the teacher then came to me and said, what are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. Searched all of my area, searched everything. And they actually found a used cannabis pipe. They then took that as evidence and said, right, I'm going to have to go to the headmaster. And I was like, okay. I knew I was in big trouble, but I wasn't aware of how big the trouble was. And the funny thing, not proud of this move, but the funny thing was, I actually had the speed in my pocket when they searched everywhere. They just didn't search me. They probably didn't expect me to actually have it in my pocket, but I felt like that was the safest place. So on the way to the headmaster's office, I threw it in the bin. And I got to the headmaster's office, and he basically suspended me and said I had to leave school immediately, and I was going to be asked to leave. So I didn't get expelled. I got asked to leave. And if I didn't get leave, I was going to get expelled. And so I was really disappointed. This was like, I hadn't thought things through. You know, I still hadn't really learned about responsibility, making decisions for myself. And I felt really guilty and a lot of shame. I felt I had to tell lies. I couldn't tell the truth. And I became a really difficult teenager with a lot of repressed anger. I was seeking distraction from my unresolved traumas of the past when I look back at it, and from my thoughts and feelings, which I really didn't know how to control. I had to drop 4 of my favorite subjects, and they were creative subjects, which were graphic design, electronics, tech, and music, of course, because the schools where I lived didn't have the same curriculum. That really depressed me. I fell into a really deep depression now. And even with all of my mum's efforts and investments in homeschooling, I couldn't focus. I remember sitting in my exam, just looking at the piece of paper, completely unfocused, not knowing what to do. And of course, unfortunately, this led me to do really badly in my GCSEs, which for people in other countries are my year 11 exams. So during this time, I became a real attention seeker. I just distracted myself from my problems rather than face them. I didn't know how to face them. Nobody around me knew how to help me recover from these things. And I actually borrowed my mum's car and I accidentally blew it up. I didn't even have a license at the time. I had a motorbike license, which I'm just about to get onto, but I didn't have a car license. She went away for the weekend. I took the car out the shed, picked up my friends, and we went for a little drive. And as we were driving down the road, I went from third to fourth to first gear and I blew the engine up. She obviously wasn't very happy. So I appreciate you, Mum. You went through a lot with me. So, yeah, as I said, I failed my exams and I was left with very few options. I decided to become a chef because I like food and cooking. I was good at home, in the kitchen, helping with my mum with the food and doing those kind of things. I didn't really know what else to do. I didn't have the opportunity to go back to school, really, that I felt. I didn't want to go back to school. I think we had to pay for it, and college was basically free or very low cost. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to become a chef. I did my CBT, which is crucial bike training, even though I do another CBT. And my mum bought me a motorbike so I could get to college. This opened me up to freedom and exploring and making great friends. When I joined the college, I was not able to understand what I was committing to. I also had issues with bullying, having my past experiences and having grown up a bit. And I actually fell out with the head chef, the teacher. He was quite a short guy, but he was always picking on anyone shorter than him. And when I say picking, he was hitting them with wooden spoons, calling them names, really out of order to them, to be honest. And one day I had enough because I was much bigger than him. And I told him exactly what I thought of him, and I stormed out and I never went back. I quit before the end. The good thing was that I'd done all the practical exams at this point, but I hadn't done the written exam, which was the main qualification. If you probably notice a theme building up here, theme of feeling like a failure. So I left and I felt like a failure again. I felt a lot of shame. I felt a lot of guilt, but I didn't know how to deal with it or what to do with it. And so I started smoking weed. I was now smoking weed daily, pretty much, with friends and stuff, drinking every weekend. And whenever there was a birthday party or anything, we'd take amphetamines and stuff. I hid all these things from my mum for years. And I was working part-time as a chef while at college. And then I was lucky enough, and I was only 16 years old, to become head chef of a small pub, mainly because the head chef quit. But I managed it really well. I ran the kitchen. I got all the meals out. I managed everything. I cooked all the food from fresh. It wasn't boiled in a bag these days. It wasn't all those things in this pub. We were making everything. I even did the Christmas dinner that I remember, which was 3 different roasts with all the trimmings. And then I realized that I really didn't like catering. It was long, unsociable, hot hours. It wasn't very good money. It was something you really had to be passionate about, and also had to have opportunities and connections with to take it very far. I also, at the time, broke my motorbike and realized it didn't even pay me enough money to fix this get somebody to fix this motorbike. And so I actually learned to fix a motorbike myself and rebuilt the engine myself. I then I quit college and I went into sales. So the only job I could get at the time, being 17 years old, was working in a call center. The company was called Orchard Marketing, and we were selling double glazing. We were working off old lists and phoning people up and going, "Hey, would you like to buy the double glazing? Okay, I'll book an appointment for you to talk to a salesperson." Well, the list was so old, we were ringing people up and they were like, he died 2 years ago. Oh, my husband died, and all these horrible things that were happening. And then, the thing that really changed it for me was when I rang up my bass teacher. So I've been playing bass since I left school, and I'd been having bass lessons. And I rang him up and he didn't know it was me, and I didn't tell him either. And he was like, "You installed my Windows last year and I'm still waiting for the keys so I can open them." And so I said, "Oh, I'll pass that on to my supervisor." At that point, I was like, "I'm not working for this company anymore. They're obviously cowboys." And so guess what? I quit again. I inside was feeling like a failure, but I really wanted to make my mum happy. And I really didn't want her to think that her efforts weren't worth it after she'd been let down so many times. So I started temping at a temp agency where I learned computer and organizational skills. And it was very good. I was earning great money straight away for my age, which was just 17, nearly 18 at this point, and went from job to job, office to office. Everybody loved me, met new people, sorry. But yeah, I was still not very happy. And I finally got a job at a company, which was a full-time job. And it went very well for a while. And I think I was just turned 18 at this point. And then the company got taken over by Granada Television. And we all had to be re-interviewed to go and work for the bigger company. And I didn't get the job. So the reason I didn't get the job, well, I was really disappointed again about not getting the job. And my mum was quite surprised I didn't get the job. And so she asked me to phone them up and ask why, which was one of the best things I ever did, was asking questions again. So I phoned them up and I said to them, I said, "Why can you just please tell me why I didn't get the job?" And they actually just said lack of eye contact. That was the main reason. And so obviously what I learned at that moment was lack of eye contact means that you're hiding something. And I was hiding a lot of things. The way I was getting jobs with no qualifications and having left school at such a young age was by just putting on my CV what GCSEs I'd done, not the grade I'd got. And also, so not saying I'd quit college, just saying I did a catering thing at college. When they asked, I just said I decided catering wasn't for me. So I learned that I was not really being myself, and I had to get jobs to make my mum happy, not for myself. I still had no real drive. I had to do things differently. So I went for a few more job interviews and I started getting job offers with this eye contact and my enthusiastic personality. I decided to buy a new motorbike, and I was going to get a loan because I had an income for a certain number of time. I didn't spend long without a job. And I got this loan, and no, actually, sorry, I was going to get the loan, but the interest rates were ridiculous. So my mum decided to lend me the money, and then I was paying her back, and she got a loan with a lot lower interest rates than me. But I hadn't learned responsibility. I hadn't learned the value of money. I hadn't learned what it meant to do these things. And so I was working, and guess what? I wasn't happy in my job, and I started to take time off work, and eventually I got fired. At the time, I was getting paid really well, but I had no idea how to take care of money. And all I'd do is spend my wages on new clothes and other things and fixing my bike and shiny bits. All right, yeah, he got expelled because he brought a girl into school. Yeah, I mean, I knew that we had girls at the school. It was an all-boys school before, but we had girls at the school, so we didn't have to bring them in. But I got in a lot of trouble for sneaking out to see girls as well that I'd met in the town on my leave days and things like that, who lived nearby. But that's other stories. I've had to leave in the main traumatic points, really, to be completely honest, just to show how you can transform your life. So, 23 minutes. I was still attention seeking, and was still easily influenced. I really liked doing exciting, naughty things, or should I say things that were exciting where I live were naughty. I really didn't feel good enough, but I was just masking that by being the fool, by being the Jack the Lad, by being the centre of attention. Most of my life I hung around with the wrong crowd, mainly because that's where I felt accepted. Yeah, I mean, overreacting, yeah, the speed, yeah, I mean, all these things, you see, what I wasn't aware of at the time was all these things were affecting my chemical balance. And so we're going to get onto where it really implodes now. So this is just all the things leading up to the absolute implosion. So at the time, by the way, I broke this other motorbike again and I rebuilt the engine. I think I didn't realize how capable I was at this moment. I could now cook, I could clean the house, I could use computers, and I could do mechanics. I could also do telesales and other things as well. So I was actually, but inside I felt no worth, I didn't feel anything. I hadn't accepted myself. And mainly because I was judging myself for being unqualified, for judging myself for my father leaving, for my stepfather leaving, blaming myself for these things. So then I got into trouble because I struggled to find a job at this point after being let down by this company. And so I think I got a temporary job, and then I just wasn't happy. So I quit it and I got involved with the wrong crowd and I started taking a lot of ecstasy. Now, everybody, to be honest, when I grew up, all the people I knew at some point experimented with ecstasy and other things. I only know like one or two people that didn't. And so we were out most weekends taking ecstasy and drinking. And I was really finding a new me, even if I was the entertainer and all these things. That's all right. Yeah, I know. I mean, sure. Please comment and ask any questions. I'm trying my best to respond to them as well. So, yeah, this is where I got into big trouble. I discovered cocaine. Cocaine suddenly gave me the false confidence, even though it felt like confidence at the time, to just say what I wanted and be who I wanted to be. But, with all these things, there's a chemical imbalance afterwards. And so I was becoming harder and harder. I moved out of my house and some friends of mine had their own place and we all moved in together and we were literally just getting high all the time. We would, I had bass guitars and I had bass amplifiers, and I went back to my house one time and I got them all into my friend's car. He was a bit older than me, and we took them down to cash converters and I sold them all so that we could fund our habit. I then started buying hash to sell to my friends so that I could make a little bit of cash. And this is where things got really bad. Me and my friend were in his car one time. We got stopped by the police and we had cocaine and we had hash on us, and we both got arrested for possession with intent. I had just turned 18 at this point. So I went to the police station with him, and it was his car and I didn't get caught with anything on me, but he was seeing my sister at the time. And I was kind of like put everybody else first kind of person. So I went into the police station and I turned around to the police and I said, I admitted possession of everything. I said, yeah, these are my things. Da, 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 da. I then got in the cell with the lawyer. He's like, well, you're bang to rights here. And I said, yeah, but to be honest, my friend is going to, well, I didn't say to be honest, I knew not to say that then. I said, my friend who's going to tell you it's all his fault because he wants to get my sister's good books and he's going to try and take the blame. But I'm telling you, it's mine. It's all my stuff. And so, the duty lawyer, the solicitor, whatever he's called, he then went and told my friend what I said. And so my friend just admitted it was all mine and they let him go and he got all the charges dropped. I then was taken to court and had to go to court. And I was actually quite lucky, because I went to court 7 times and the police adjourned the case every time through lack of evidence. Lack of evidence actually means they haven't prepared the paperwork for court. And so on the 8th time, my mum was getting fed up and she phoned the lawyer and she said, look, I know what you did. I know that you told the other guy what to do because I've spoken to him now and that's illegal. So I want you to get my son somebody better to represent him at court. And so he said he was busy on the day I had my 8th court case, and a barrister arrived. A really lovely woman. She was, probably only in her late 20s. She was quite young, and she just said, right, what's happening? What's that? She said, really? And I'm going to tell you this bit afterwards, but I actually went to rehab and to help with my case. And I also had managed to get a job by this time. So in the 8th case, she's like, so you've got a job, you're getting back on with your life, you've been to rehab, and they still haven't prepared the evidence. She said, well, if they adjourn again today, I'm going to put them in contempt of court and ask them to throw it out. And so they adjourned again through lack of evidence. And she then protested, adjourned through contempt of court, or whatever they call it. The magistrates went away, came back and said, yep, you're wasting this man's time, and threw the case out. I was very lucky. But this was quite an experience for somebody of 18 years old with all these issues. Of course, I still felt like a failure, but I also felt very lucky, and it was kind of really mixed up emotions at this point. During this time, on the advice of the lawyer, I'd gone to rehab, and I'm really glad I did, because it did uncover a lot for me. So in rehab, I actually felt more like a failure. I was judging myself. I realized how much I was comparing and judging myself. I was in Cocaine Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous with people who, they had real drug issues. I had drug issues, but my issues were just like not being able to deal with my own thoughts and emotions, and finding it easier to block them through taking substances. Also being accepted by more people for being one of them, and being part of a community of people who were having shared highs, shared experiences, and talking silly rubbish and laughing and joking about things. So in the rehab, I really felt like I couldn't come back from that. I was like, what am I doing here? I'm coming down after months of just being high all the time. I'm trapped in this place. It's a really nice place. I was very lucky. My mum had a really good job at the time, and she had health insurance. And luckily, the health insurance paid for this rehab. So it was actually the Priory in London, or one of the Priories in London. And one day I sat in my room and I was like, I can't do anything about this. I can't change this. I can't make this better. I'm going to kill myself. There's no, there's no reason to continue. I've failed at school. I've failed at this. I can't take all those things I've done wrong back. And looking back, they were just normal growth pains, And so I slit my wrist. I still have the scar to remind me of it today, with 4 stitches. Luckily for me, I didn't premeditate it. We didn't have like Google. I mean, we had old Nokia phones at the time, so there was no way of finding out the correct way to do it and all those things. So I slit across and not up. And I had this epiphany at the time, only one life. So I realized this was my only one life. Even if reincarnation and all those things do exist, I'm not going to get an opportunity to make the most of this life ever again if I die in this moment. And so I left my room quickly, went to the person who was on the desk at the rehab and said, look, I need a nurse. And they got me some bandages, got me a doctor, and I got stitched up. This led me to be diagnosed with a chemical imbalance, which they told me I would have for life. And they said, you have to take antidepressants for the rest of your life. That's the only way you can deal with it. And I said, no. I said, look, you tried to give me the health service tried to give me Prozac before I refused. They then said, okay, well, there's another thing you can do. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy. So I did cognitive behavioral therapy, and this is where my journey of transformation really started. I learned at this point that I had a lot of inherited beliefs and a lot of inherited or learned behavior. So learned thought patterns, ways of thinking. I would generalize, everyone does that, and we're all like that, and that's normal, and all these things that are really unhelpful. And so what CBT enabled me to do was try and find my own beliefs, which was good, but I pretty much went for the opposite beliefs, which a lot of them I still live with today, like anyone can do anything they set their mind to. So anyway, I got another job as well, and I actually became an executive salesman for Renault cars in a main dealership in Dunstable. I'd only been driving 1 month when I got the job. I only just passed my driving test. And I had it looked like I had a pre-experience because of my CV being completely like elaborated is the best way I can put it. It's like slightly modified, and I was getting good at not making it look like a lie and talking a lot. And so they gave me the job. I was on commission only. No, I was on 10 grand a year to start, which is not a lot. But then I went on to commission only. But commission only was great. I had my first 4 grand month. I stayed off the drugs. I stayed clean. I started looking after myself. But then after I'd been there for about 6 months, suddenly it turns out all the other sales were doing cocaine. And as I became friends with them, we went to bars, we went to pubs. They were sneakily going, there's a line for you in the toilet. And I didn't know how to say no. And so I was getting back into these things, but only at work now, not at home and not with my other friends. But then I went to a friend's birthday and I took an ecstasy tablet. And I was like, whoa, back to the old ways, fun, fun, fun. The next day I got fired from work. I went into work and this Mazda MX-5 had turned up, and the boss said, somebody said, one of the salesmen said, because the boss wasn't in, somebody needs to fill this up with petrol. And I'll do it straight away. So I went off to drive the car, and I was driving a bit fast, and I spun the car and I crashed the car. It was my boss, my new sales manager's first day off, and he got called into work. And yes, I got fired. And I felt like a failure again. I didn't learn to think things through. And now I was spiraling out of control. Even with the CBT, things weren't right. I got back into weed and taking ecstasy, and I was working at the time and doing something else, but it wasn't a very good job. I was working at Halfords, and so I was literally I started selling weed to my friends because they were always getting small deals. And I realized that if I went and got a larger amount of weed, then I wouldn't have to pay for any weed. And then my small wages wouldn't go very far. But I wasn't really helping myself. And then guess what? I got arrested again. Now, I got arrested. What happened was, it was a long story, drove to Southampton, did all these crazy things, got home with the weed, and my exhaust split on the way home. So I decided to park my car up and go and get the train. Not a very good decision because it was really smelly cannabis at the time. But that wasn't the problem. What the problem was that somebody who was jealous of me in this town that wasn't my own town, their dad was a policeman, and they told their dad what I was doing. And so as I'm walking down the road to go to the train station, I suddenly see all these police cars. And I'm like, this is weird. And so suddenly this unmarked police car pulls up, and he's like, are you Matt? And I'm like, yep. And he's like, I've got him. And as soon as he says I've got him, 2 other police cars come around the end of the road. So I ran. And I ran as fast as I could, and I'm being chased by 2 police cars. So I start weaving in front between these cars, and then I run through these gardens, and I'm jumping over hedges. And then I had this big jacket on with a pouch in the front pocket. And that's where this weed was. It was 4 ounces of weed, which is quite a lot, 100 grams of weed. So I pulled the weed out my front pocket as I jumped over a hedge, and then looked like I fell over the hedge. But actually what I was doing was stuffing the weed in the hedge, rolled on the grass, and I don't know where this idea came from, kept running. And then I got arrested about 3 gardens up with only a packet of Rizla in my pocket. They're like, we know you've got something. We know you've got something. We're going to find it. I'm like, what are you talking about? I haven't got anything. They arrested me, took me to the police station. They found the weed because they got sniffer dogs out. But the law in England is that you have to be, you're innocent till proven guilty, and they need evidence. You need to be caught in possession for them to prove it. And because the address I got arrested was 57, and where they actually found the weed was 54, and it was in a plastic bag that had no fingerprints on it that they could actually recognize, they had to drop the charges again. So now I've got arrested away with possession with intent 2 times. It really didn't. It definitely was actually part of my journey where I had to learn how stupid our system is and how ridiculous, controlling people from these things are, because ultimately weed is much better than alcohol, but and it's now legal in the US, and it can help with a lot of things, and it's not like a crime drug. It doesn't really destroy lives, although it makes teenagers lazy. So now, with all these issues and everything, my mum advised me that I should change town, and that the police would be on my back. Not only that, and this is something that a few people will want to know. So if you're watching, you're going to learn something about me that not many people know. This is where I actually changed my name. So Love is my family name, but my original birth name is Matthew Owens, Owens. But because I've been arrested twice, and I hadn't seen my dad now. I've forgotten about that story for a year. I decided I was going to change. I was planning to change it anyway, but I decided now was the right time, because now I had this thing hanging over me. Basically, when they withdrew the charges, they said if I get arrested for anything in the next 5 years, then I'd be prosecuted for everything that had happened to me before. So I then moved town and I changed my name to my mum's maiden name, which is Love. And this was like a whole new world for me. This was like being born again. You know, we talk about spirituality and rebirth. Well, this was moving town and changing names. It's just like a whole new life. So I changed towns, and because I felt so guilty because of what I'd done and ashamed, and I wanted to make my mum happy again, really not doing any of these things for myself. I still didn't have enough self-worth to do these things for myself. And I'm now 18 years old. I managed to get a job within a week of moving towns. So I moved there, rented the flat off the side of my grandma's house. So she had a little annex, which was lovely. And she's a lovely woman. And I'm so looking forward to seeing her this Easter. And got this job as sales liaison for a small adhesive company. And it was really good. And I started making friends, and I was a bit stressed by things. So I started putting my CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, into action, and analyzing myself, and I changed my ways. But what was happening was I wasn't connecting with the people properly at work, and I felt like I was living a lie. And so I kept working, but I always just felt this is hard, and I couldn't tell people the truth, because what if the boss found out, and then I'd lose my job and all these things. So I had to live this double life. I had to live this lie, and it was hard. But suddenly something good happened. After I'd worked for this company for nearly a year, I wanted to move out, and I found out I could get a mortgage because I changed my name. Because I actually had a bad credit rating, because when I was a student at college, I managed to get a student credit card, or no, debit card, and a checkbook, and I ran it all up. And because I was only 17, they couldn't actually take the money off of me, but they could give me a bad credit rating. So that's what they did. And so had I not changed names, I wouldn't be able to get this mortgage. Anyway, I was really lucky. I bought a flat, or as we call it in America, an apartment in the local town, and I moved. I was now 20 years old, owner of a house, working full time, completely changed my life. Whole new world. People didn't know me for all the weaknesses I'd had before, and I was able to put my new positive mentality into action, and again made really good friends. But then the lie was getting to me, and the work was getting to me as well. Working in a small company, is quite hard, where it's not really about whether you got the skills, it's about how much the boss can trust you, which was very, very difficult. Yeah, weed is pretty bad. It does cause problems in families, like you know from experience. Yeah, well, anything that changes your mood is definitely bad. But what I'm saying, if you learn, it's definitely not as bad as alcohol, in my opinion. You know, on the effects on the body, and other things. And actually, cannabinoids are really good for stress, and we create anti-cannabinoids. I believe they're called antibonoids, and the cannabinoids balance them out, which reduce stress, whereas alcohol does pretty much nothing to us apart from kill our livers and remove our inhibitions to the point that we act a bit stupidly. But yes, we definitely stayed with me for a long time, is the best way I can put it. And yeah, it didn't do me any favors. You know, I smoked some last year, and yeah, I was like, how did I smoke this my whole life? Why did I smoke this my whole life? I know, because it shuts the mind down. It shuts down all those things you can't resolve. It makes you just laugh and look at stupid things, and everything feels stupid. But then when you're not smoking it, or when people challenge you with serious stuff, yeah, you can overreact. I agree. So I then, going to be surprised here, I then stopped going to this work. I kept calling in sick, and eventually they phoned me up and they said, look, in the last month you've had 20 days off, and the month before that you had 10, and the month before that you had 6, and so we're going to actually ask you to leave, but we're going to give you a month's money and let you leave. And so I left, and I had this mortgage to pay. I lived in a strange town, and I felt like a failure again. I didn't know how to deal with it other than distract myself. So I went out and I was like, where can I get some weed? And so I was like, I've spotted a skate park in the town. Where else do you go to get weed but the skate park? And yeah, so I just happened to go to the skate park, literally as the main guy who was coming along, or who sold weed came along. And he was like, oh, have you got a car? And I was like, yeah, my car's there. I had a car. And he's like, oh, you couldn't give me a lift, could you? Well, we were like 1 year difference in age, and we suddenly became friends. This led me back into making a lot of mistakes, but it didn't last long because I was aware that this wasn't how I wanted to spend my life. But suddenly I was partying every weekend, not looking for a job, giving him lifts around the town, and that was paying my mortgage and stuff. I was starting to spend more and I wasn't taking life seriously. And I'm now 20. No, I'm just turning 21. So this went on for about a year, to be honest. And then 22, I was like, okay, this isn't really, I'm not in a good place here. I'm going to go, I need to get away from here. I'm going to lose this flat. I'm going to lose this mortgage. I'm going to end up with debt. And so I spoke to the mortgage company and I said, look, I'm trying to sell the flat because I've lost my job. Will you hold off the mortgage until I've sold it? And they turned around and said yes. I was like, brilliant. So I went to stay with my mum, who I forgot to say had moved to Portugal at this point. So she'd left the country 2 years previously. And I went to stay with her. And while I was out there, I found out that the flat was worth a lot more than I bought it for. And, I really liked Portugal. Had a great quality of life. And, and other things as well, which was where my head was still. It had lots of great parties and lots of open-minded people. Now, in my time, I was never a horrible person. All I did was try and make other people happy, and seeing other people made myself happy. Getting high made me feel like I was happy, even though I understand I wasn't really happy. They were altered states, and that's what I nearly called this, was altered states of consciousness, or higher states of consciousness. They accelerated my ability to produce serotonin, but then they depleted it majorly the next day. So anyway, and I moved to Portugal, and because I had, I know I'm on the hour now, and I've still got quite a bit of story, so I'm going to paraphrase this. I was quite lucky because the flat was worth money. I sold it, made some money. The money went further in Portugal. So I was now 23 years old, and I was like, right, what do I want to do? Oh, I'm going to run a bar. I'm a qualified chef, caterer, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to run a bar. So I then went and found a bar, and it was really cool. And I thought, this is the perfect place. It was in the town that I really liked, and there was no other bars in this town. So I thought, this is destiny. This is fate. Then the landlord turned around to me and said, you don't even need to get a license. I've got a license. You can use my license. I'm like, brilliant. So suddenly it was just getting easier to open the doors. After I opened the doors, decorated the place, I found out that this bar used to be the place to come and get anything you wanted. Yeah, no matter what it was. So you come in and ask for Coke, and they'd ask you, do you want a gram of Coke or a glass of Coke? And I wasn't aware of this when I rented the bar. So I just walked straight back into this lifestyle. And I believe now, looking at this is to do with the law of vibration, the law of attraction. When most people who are doing things, are all vibrating at the same frequency. And so if you don't resolve your issues and learn the lessons you're being sent to learn, you keep attracting the same experiences. And this was the story of my life, is repeating over and over again, failure, mistake, making decisions to make other people happy, not being happy with those decisions, and moving on. I ran the bar for a year, it went really well, made some really good friends, established my life in Portugal, and then went to renew the contract, and the landlord tried to rip me off. I then left with a whole bar stocked with alcohol, which was a good few €1,000s worth of alcohol, and not a lot of money left over because I wasn't very good at managing money. I obviously felt a bit like a failure, but I then still carried on. And luckily, some people needed their apartments cleaned because they're having trouble with their cleaners. And so I suddenly became a cleaner. But then they were like, "You clean my apartment so well. Look, I need you to manage my property." And then within 3 months, I was managing 10 properties, and I now run a property management business. That went really well and worked with my kind of lifestyle that I developed in the bar. I really saw myself as a rebel, somebody who was blessed, somebody who was blessed by life and sent to share freedom with everybody. I lived in duality my whole life, you know, being partying and exploring what I was seeing as freedom. And to be honest, it is freedom. You should enjoy life and have the ability to do what you want to do. However, you do in our world need to have quite a lot of money to survive and feel free. So I then went from property management. So I did that for about a year, and I'm now 24, just turning 25. And they changed the law in Portugal. And so basically, I had to, all the houses had to be licensed and all these things, which they didn't have to be before. So some of my people didn't want to get these licenses, so they left me. And I didn't want to work illegally in Portugal, but for some reason I was a bit nervous and probably just like wasn't really. I was working quite hard doing the work, and it was good money and stuff. But I just wanted to do other things. I wanted to do what I'd been called to do, even though I didn't know what that was. And so I quit, and I gave the houses to somebody else, should I say, friends of my mum's to manage them. And then I decided to go back to England to work with my friend who had started a courier business. And we worked for a long time. I worked with him for a year, and then I also started working on the docks. And my plan was to be there for a year and save some money and come back. But I ended up there for 18 months, and really I just got involved with things for the wrong reasons, because they were just the things I've been involved in before, because I hadn't resolved my issues, because I was still vibrating at this frequency where all I was doing was attracting people who were suffering with the same issues as me. But they weren't trying to do anything about it, and secretly inside I was. So when I went back, this time I got really well. When I was in Portugal and I ran my bar, I started taking a lot of LSD. Most of the parties were about taking LSD in Portugal, and LSD made me think a lot. LSD got me to try and look at all the world's problems, try and analyze. And really what I was doing was trying to find the root cause of my own problems. So I was analyzing parenting, I was analyzing marriage, I was analyzing love, I was analyzing religion, I was analyzing society, I was analyzing civilization, I was analyzing, everything, to the point that I had so many epiphanies. So, I was really investigating life, exploring freedom, as I said a minute ago. And I came to these amazing conclusions, which really sit well with me today. And this is why I see this whole spiritual soul's journey and how it all works. So the conclusions I came to by the time I was 25 were all life is energy. There is a lot more to life than our language can explain and than we currently understand. The purpose of humans is to heal and create, because everything in this world that we rely on to live is our creation, except for nature. Nature is there, and okay, as spirit and stuff, yes, we created it all, but as each individual human being on this planet, we created what we call the world on Mother Earth. Love is an emotion, and if we loved ourselves, we'd be happy, and so we wouldn't need to make others happy, and everybody would be happy. Our society does not allow for love with the way most people enter marriage. Most people are looking for a replacement for their mum or dad to fill in the holes of their unresolved childhood traumas, or they're looking for financial security or recognition and acceptance. They don't really know what love is yet. Not all, though. I'm just saying quite a lot. And the system and the economy will strip the planet of its resources, its people, especially if people continue to live excessively. So these are all conclusions that I drew through taking lots of acid from the age of 24 to 26. I really was people loved me and I loved all of them, and people really supported me, and I made such strong connections and had so many deep connections, conversations over these times. And I'm not saying that these things, you need drugs, but this is my experience of this. It was like my 60s, peace and love, you know. It wasn't about sex, it wasn't about any of these other things. It was just about human connection, human understanding, exploration. You know, why are we here? What is our purpose? What is my purpose? You know, these were the questions that I was asking myself, along with, you know, where does civilization, religion come from? And, you know, I ended up writing a book by the time I came back to Portugal at 26, I think. And the book was called 5 Reasons Society is the Biggest Bomb in the World. Basically, because it had, the main one I remember being part of it is because we reinforce our negatives. You know, we don't actually deal with the things that are holding us back, the things that stop us from living the life we want. Instead, everybody goes, oh, don't worry, everybody has that problem. Yeah, nobody from around here can do that. Oh yeah, your father was just the same. Yeah, you know, all these, they reinforce the negative so much. So my life imploded again, and this is like what, 10, 15 times that my life has now imploded. And I realized I was unhappy and I felt like a failure. I moved back to Portugal, and I now had very little money because I hadn't really saved much in the UK. I was 25 years old. I'd done a whole host of different jobs very well, but I'd never really enjoyed them. And so I just kept quitting them because I wasn't happy and I wasn't fulfilled. And I just came back and I started to feel guilty again. I started to feel shame. I started to feel that what I had to do was make my mum happy. And so I basically, I told her all the truths about what had happened and all the conclusions that I'd come to. And she said, yeah, I'm very idealistic, you know, and it's quite out there and all those things. And I took her advice, and so as to make her happy. And I just buried those beliefs. I didn't make them part of who I was, even though they are absolutely the core of who I am, to be honest. And so she and I tell you the reason they're the core of who I am is because I know we can make this world such a better place. We've made it what it is today. We've learned so many lessons as a race, you know, that we can change things, and we will change things, and things are changing, even though the majority of people are using words like uncertain and challenging. And no, things are changing. Yeah, things are going to change. Every time everything falls apart, something better comes from it, as I discovered here in my life. So at the time, she's starting a company called Linen, etc., which is still going today. And she was originally selling these key safes to property management companies. And so she asked all the property management companies, you know, what else do you need? And they said, we can't get white sheets and towels. And so, you know, market research, by the way, really important thing. And she's like, okay, I'm going to start selling white sheets and towels. So she started selling white sheets and towels. But my sister was living here at the time with her husband. And so she's like, look, if you can't find work, to my sister, I'll set the shop up and you can run the shop. My sister, as far as I understand it, agreed. And then she set up this shop that my mum didn't really want, that also sold curtains and cushions and all these other things. And my sister then, her husband's family offered them a house in the UK where they only had to pay half the mortgage. Suddenly turned around and said, no, Mum, I'm going back to the UK. So me being me, I said, look, I'll help you. And I went and started working in the shop. Now I had a lot of sales experience. I had marketing experience for all the different jobs I had. You know, catering actually teaches you to multitask, recipe planning and all these other things. And so I went in and I just learned what to do. We had somebody building us a website. We were launching this new business. We had it all in the papers. The guy turned around and said, I can't finish the website on time. I've got these things, 5 things to do, and there's only 7 days to do it. I can only do one thing at a time. I said, look, I'll do it. So I got the instructions on how to do it. And then I learned to build the website. Sorry, my phone is sent over. And so I learned to build the website, and I managed to finish the website on time. So we then launched the company. I developed all the stock systems. I stocked all the shelves and organized everything. I did all of the deliveries. I later created all the coding for the stocks, all the point of sale systems, and my mum generated all the business, which is what she's very good at, and also managed all the other people and everything like that, and the wages and all those things, and the accountant. I then started designing all the marketing, learned to use Photoshop, and this is where a lot of my skills came in. I was literally just always thinking on my feet. I was already learnt DIY as a teenager. So I was putting up all the shelves in the shop, and these were like 5 meters high in the shop. I fitted sinks, I fitted plumbing, I did electrics, I did all these things. And then I just kept going. After about a month or two, we realized that the website couldn't be found in Google. And so I had a good friend that I'd met who was a computer guy. His name's Rupert, unfortunately passed away with lymphoma at 38 years old, about 8 years ago now. And he said, right, here you go. This is what you need to do to rank the business. And so I ranked the website did exactly what he said, and yet within 3 weeks we were now page 1 on Google, not just for our company name but also for all of our products and all of the things on the website, and all of the keywords we wanted to rank for. And so from that day on, I learned a lot of things from him. I worked with my mum for nearly 10 years. In that time I met my partner, who was Portuguese. Now I was still living a double life at this point. I was still going out partying nearly every weekend with my friends because I was still attracting the same people. I literally would make decisions that would lead me to meet these people. And we'd get on straight away. We were like-minded. We were rebelling against the system in life. And so I met my partner, and when I worked, I would go out at the weekend. I'd stay out Saturday night. I probably wouldn't sleep. I'd get home Sunday. I'd sleep early Sunday, and I'd go to work on Monday. And it never affected my life. It didn't really seem like a problem to me. I was actually saying, this is who I am. I thought I was my habits. I thought I was. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I know it's gone on a bit long. I actually had a lot more to say, but you can tell my life has been eventful. And this is why I'm here sharing this with people, because anybody that can watch this, is realize you can come back from anything. So, every time I kept learning new things, but mainly to make other people happy and to make my life easier. And learning things makes your life easier. So I met my partner anyway, and we met partying. I was also a DJ in the bars now at this point. My friend had turned around to me and goes, let's DJ at 22. You're the best DJ I know. Come and DJ with me in the bar so we can earn a bit of extra cash. And I didn't really want the cash. I just wanted to go and play music. So I went and played. And that's where I met my partner. And so when we met, I assumed she was like me, but she wasn't. She was much more sensible and respected herself a lot more. And so at first, she wasn't happy with my partying and being out for 3 days at Halloween and things like that. And so I realized I was going to lose her if I didn't start to change. I then started to change. And so right at this point, I'm now 29 years old, just about to turn 30. And so I started reducing the amount I went out, and we had a great few years. And then after we'd been together about 3 years, I said to her, would you like to have a child with me? And she's like, yeah, I would actually. And neither of us had really thought it through. We hadn't had enough education to know that you needed money to have a child, or quite a lot of money. We had some money, but not a lot, or stability, or any of these things. And so we then decided to have Rebecca, and I thought, oh, that's all right. When you decide to have a child, you've got months until you're going to have a child. And literally 3 weeks later, we're in that night, basically probably made the baby by the sounds of it. 3 weeks later, we were in the hospital, in the doctor's, and she's pregnant. And then 9 months later, our beautiful girl was born. But it soon became apparent that I wasn't earning enough money, and I couldn't earn enough money with my mum. She couldn't pay me enough to actually support the family, even with her generosity and kindness, the maternity money she gave my wife and all these things. And so I decided to start a business directory. I was like, well, I know that this community here needs a business directory. They need better coverage online, and to do it individually for each of them is quite a challenge. But to create a business directory, I can get everybody customers and get all the customers what they're looking for, because most people would come in our shop and say, oh, I can't find this and I can't find that. And most businesses I'd speak to would say, oh, how are you getting found online? I can't be found online. So I started this business directory and it went really well. But I didn't value myself, and so I was undercharging. And so I was going out and I was selling. And then people started saying, look, you don't know anyone who can build us a website, do you? I was like, yeah, well, I've just built this website myself. And just to mention, my friend Rupert, who I mentioned a minute ago, my mentor, he taught me how to build websites. He taught me how to use WordPress, and he then pointed me in the right direction on everything. Well, not everything, but all the things to do with WordPress and websites anyway, and SEO. And the stuff that he taught me, so many people don't know. I mean, it's like gold. I'm still relevant today, and I'm so appreciative of you, Rupert. And my work as well is in honor of you, and it's such a shame you're not here working with me. And so anyway, I then started building them websites, and then people were like, oh, do you know anybody that can do social media marketing? I'm like, yeah, well, you have to do social media marketing to rank a website. And I know how to do social media well. Oh, can you do it? So I suddenly started doing social media marketing, and I did some courses on social media marketing. In fact, I then went to Udemy and I did the Complete Web Developer, which is 39 hours of website training, 5 or 6 social media marketing courses on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook ads, chatbots, and I can't remember, Pinterest, and then video production as well. So how to make videos. I learned all the software. We had all the software. I still got most of it today, apart from Adobe, because I don't really use it. And then I was already proficient in SEO, sales, computers, because I'd worked with my friend Rupert for a little while as well before I went back to England, and all tech, as well as traditional marketing. So that's where I started this business, and it was going very well. And I was really lucky to land some amazing clients. I actually found a child therapist who's called Laura, amazing woman. She taught me how to be a conscious parent, and I learned so much from building her website. And then a business coach called Will, and this is just 2 of the most life-changing clients I had. And so Laura really helped me with my child, and now I'm really proud to say my 9-year-old is an amazing person who's so talented, and I wouldn't change anything for the world. And then Will was my business coach, and I worked with him for a while, and then we made an agreement that I would update his website and he would give me business coaching. And that's where this transformational journey really started, because I wanted my business to be a success. And so I started reading on Medium and other places about how to be a success, because this guy was 75 years old and he was in his office every day, loving every minute of it. In his breaks, he was on a walker and he was like skiing and doing exercise. I'm like, I don't even do much exercise. And so I was like, right, I'm going to change my life. I found that the difference between a successful entrepreneur and an unsuccessful entrepreneur is habits. Oh, thank you. I hope people benefit from this story. So I realized that even all the way through my life, up until this point, I had such terrible habits. I had really no good habits, other than making people laugh, making people smile, being able to cook, being able to clean. But I still make a mess, and I still, I was counterproductive in my own ways. But I didn't have any supportive habits. I didn't really read. I only learned when I had to. I definitely overworked. I didn't schedule much. I just had a to-do list. I didn't walk. I didn't exercise. Didn't meditate. I didn't do yoga, Pilates, or any of these other good things that you can do. I didn't do any of them. And so I just learned that was the main difference between successful entrepreneurs and unsuccessful entrepreneurs, is they learn how to make themselves a better person. And that is the secret to success. They also develop what's called a growth mindset. So I started making my business better, and it turned 2020, and every year got better in my business. 2019 was a great year, and I already had agreed contracts for 2020 which was going to make my first, what they call, six-figure year. So I was going to turn over 100,000 euros on my own. Sometimes with my wife doing design, and without even doing any advertising in 2020. And so I'd slowly given up the partying and everything in 2019. I'd stopped going out all the time. I'd stopped taking things all the time. I stopped drinking. But obviously it was still habitual for me. They were the habits that I had. And I went out for my friend's birthday at the end of 2019 at Christmas. And I was only going out for a few drinks and then I was coming home. But the next thing I know, I come round at his house at 10:30 in the morning and I'm blackout drunk and I've been partying all night. And the last thing I remember was 10 o'clock in the evenings. So this is 12 hours before. And the reason that happened was because I had been used to drinking a lot all my life from the age of like 17, to be honest, 16, 17. And so where I gave up in 2019, I had less tolerance, but I still had the habit of drinking very fast. And so I went to the pub and drank my drink so quickly that I managed to black out. And then my problem when I black out is I don't go to sleep. I don't do these things. I keep going. So I'd then gone to my friend's house with them and drank all night with them. And then only came around at 10:30 and taken other things as well. And I only came around at 10:30. And this is 2019. So I'm only talking about 4 years ago now. And I came around at 10:30 in the morning, arguing with my friend whose birthday it was, because I'd been rude to his girlfriend. And I don't even remember what I said, what I did, still till today, because I drank so much. I was so upset with myself because I'd done this, and I was becoming aware that I'd been very selfish at a lot of times in my life. That I'd learned from studying about being a successful entrepreneur that the only thing I can do is accept that and learn to change the growth mindset. I am where I am and I have to move forward. So 2020 came along and I decided I was going to start exercising and eating healthily. And I said to myself, look, if I don't try this for 4 weeks and ask myself how I really feel in 4 weeks, be consistent, I won't know if this works. So I started that. And that was like February, end of January, February. And then I'm all excited about my contracts renewing in the first few weeks of March. It gets to the end of the 4 weeks exercise. I'm like, oh, I definitely feel better. I'm going to keep this up. And the pandemic hits. And I'm a local business marketer, by the way. I only work with local businesses, and every local business across the world shut. And all of the clients who were also semi-friends as well, because we actually got on and talked, decided not to renew their contracts. And so suddenly I'm living in a foreign country. I had a slight problem with Social Security from the year before that I wasn't aware of, so I was not entitled to any support from the government. I reduced my income to 10%, which didn't even cover my rent in my house. Yeah, my rent in the house was over 10 grand a year. And so, that was all the money I had coming in. My daughter was in a private school, and they only reduced the school by 30% because they were private. And then we had homeschooling. It was quite a challenging time, but luckily for me, I picked up these good habits of exercise, and I started walking, and I'd learned to ask for help. And so thank you all for staying this long. I'm nearly at the halfway mark. I'm nearly at the end, sorry, halfway mark. I'm nearly at the end. And so I went into a group called Growth Mindset and Emotional Intelligence, and I asked, it was about somebody that was owing me money that was refusing to pay. And I said, what do you do when somebody doesn't keep their word, basically? And I met this coach called Steve Baker, awesome guy. I love him to bits. He introduced me to meditation for the first time in 2020. And I straight away saw with meditation that I was able to see what was on my mind and the things I wasn't dealing with. And so I started journaling and meditation and started going through all the things that were on my mind and working them out. And then he introduced me to a habit building course. And then he introduced me to a time management course, which also focused on something called transactional analysis, which then led me to read a book, which I actually already had on my shelf that I hadn't read, about transactional analysis. And I learned that I still wasn't being completely honest with myself. So I was still drinking occasionally, but not a lot. But I'd say I need this to relax. I was still occasionally smoking weed and saying I need this to relax. And I realized I didn't need these things. It's just what I was telling myself. And when I realized that a lot of the pain I was feeling was from not being honest with myself, I suddenly started being honest with myself. And within a few weeks, I felt the best I've ever felt in my entire life. Oh, thank you, Rachel. I mean, I honestly hope that this is valuable to people, because I feel like I've just gone on forever. And I'm only I want to show you that how important it is just to not fear being yourself, and not fear telling people who you are. Let people know who you really are. I'm never going to hide behind a mask again. I'm never going to fear telling people who I am again, because who I am makes me. Yeah, this is my place in the world. This is my journey, is to come here and learn these things. So anyway, meditation, better habits, self-honesty, suddenly put every single experience in my life together. I wouldn't know about all these things. I wouldn't know myself without all of the failures. And the failures are just lessons, by the way. So if the word failure triggers you, then work out what the lesson was you were sent to learn. I wouldn't have done these, know about these things. I wouldn't be able to help people. I wouldn't be able to work with and help transformational specialists in the way I can if I hadn't learned these things. I can really tell anyone that there is more high in finding yourself and loving yourself and accepting yourself as an equal human, united through the fact that you're human, yeah, right, than there is in any chemical substance or even natural substance. Okay, and I've eaten 20 grams of mushrooms one time. I've drank 16 drops of LSD. I've done countless amounts of cocaine. I've even smoked crack cocaine. I've never injected anything. That's one decision I made in my life, is I'm never going to inject anything. I respected myself too much. So thank you, soul, for carrying me through that one. But not saying if you have that there isn't anything, but I know that once you've done that, it's quite a hard thing to, such a high. It's quite hard, but it's not a real high. And this is the thing. It's the thing you have to learn about all of the breaking the rules, breaking the law, even being an adrenaline junkie and taking drugs and alcohol, is they are accelerated highs. They're modified highs. They're creating a false reality. But because it creates a feeling within inside of you, you convince yourself it's real. Yeah, but it's not. The only real thing is saying, today, I am going to work out what it is I like. What is it I want? And what is it I want to do? And to be calm, be patient, realize, you've probably got another 50, 60, 70, maybe some of us got less years in front of you. I mean, I've been told by Reed I'm going to live till 96, and I'm 41 now. So that tells me I've got 55 years left. That's more time than I've had already. So I've got loads to do. Never stop growing. Never push yourself too hard. As the Buddha would say, live gracefully. That's really where the value is, is to understand that everything that happened to you so you can learn from it. The things that people did to you, and I didn't really cover any of them because this was about the mistakes I'd made and the guilt and the shame and the failure. But the things that people did to you, they only did because they didn't know any better at the time. Even if you can know better, or somebody had told them better, they hadn't accepted that as better. Yeah. They're no reflection on you. Like my dad leaving me, my dad choosing not to see me, my stepdad leaving me. That's no reflection on me. That's a reflection on them, their lack of commitment, their lack of ability to show up for themselves. Now you've got to not focus your energy on those things, because you will stop showing up for yourself. Yeah. You will let yourself down, then you'll feel guilt, and then you'll feel failure. You'll seek out acceptance and love and happiness in places where it doesn't exist. It's inside of you. I'm not going to get too deep right now, but thank you for everybody that stayed. It's been an amazing show. I have had so many more experiences than that I had to skip through tons and tons of them. I realized I wasn't going to get this done. But I think the most important thing is that it doesn't matter what happens to you. It was sent here for you. You know, everything that happens is a lesson you can learn. And the lesson you need to learn is, how do I make that happen again if you like the experience? Or how do I ensure that doesn't happen again if you don't like the experience? Now, as a child, it's difficult. As an adult, you've got more choices. Sometimes is, don't hang around with the same people. Don't go to that bad area of town at this time of night. Make sure I got petrol in my car. You know, there's so many choices you can make that can prevent you from making mistakes, or how were the cause of you being in the situation where something bad happened that has left you traumatized. You know, you have to learn to be more patient, to think things through, to make decisions, and don't expect too much of yourself. When you're changing your life, it's little by little, because transformation and changing your life is a lifelong thing. Yeah, it's not like you're going to get to the end and be there. Thank you, Anastasia. Yeah, you are going to want to change little by little. Like for me, I changed a little bit of exercise, a little bit of diet. I introduced new habits. I learned new things, but I don't expect to have learned it all within this amount of time and cram it in and sleep late and overwork or have a six pack or, oh, look at my muscles, or, oh, my diet, I've lost so many. I'm not interested in any of those things, because this is for life. Yeah, there is no end. Oh, thank you, Sil. Yeah, thank you so much. I didn't even know you were there. So, you know, do it for you. And if everybody does it for themselves, then everybody in the world will be happy, and nobody will have to make each other happy. You know, it is that simple. It is really, really that simple. You know, make yourself happy, and not at the expense of others. Yeah, by doing creative things, by finding out what interests you. Don't worry about what other people think, because they're only judging you because they don't have the guts to do the things themselves, and get on with this journey, loving this journey. So thank you all. And I'll wrap it up. What a long show. I appreciate every one of you for staying. And if you're listening to this on YouTube or as a podcast or on Facebook, please, if you want to talk about anything, contact me. If you want to find out about how you can start changing your life, then if I haven't given you the answers here, then send me a message, go to my website and send me an email, and I'll either help you myself or introduce you to somebody who can help you. Okay. And when I say help, they'll give you answers and they'll give you tools that can give you clarity, because you have all the answers inside of you. So much love to all of you. Much love. And thank you for listening, and have a wonderful rest of your week. See you all later.